everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this Brick by Brick session where we talk to the brightest minds across the world on building businesses sustainably in a brick by brick manner. The topic for today is building a category leader in the mom and baby personal care segment. We have with us Mohit and Mallika Sadani, co-founders of Mom's Company, a leader in the mom and baby segment. Mallika and Mohit, really appreciate you guys joining us. And Mallika just tested positive, COVID positive this morning. So really appreciate you joining despite that, Mallika.
Oh, yeah, pleasure to be here. I hope I can talk as much and add value to the conversation.
No, absolutely. And I'll ensure that Mohit does most of the talking. And for the first time, we have two guests on the show, so really excited about that. Audience, throughout the conversation, if you have any questions, please share them in the Q&A tab. We've allocated 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the conversation. So, Mallika, maybe I'll start with you. Why don't we just go back in time and just talk through the initial decision to start the business? You know, both of you were outsiders. You were in banking and Mohit had a consulting background, and you decided to launch a personal care brand, and that too a digital first one. Back then it was quite unprecedented. So what gave you the confidence to start, and just that confidence that you could pull it off in this segment?
Yeah. So Hari, I think what happened with us that we found a concern that was faced by many. So we lived in London, we came back from London, and my daughter had a skin condition called atopic dermatitis. And what we noticed was that when I was looking out for safer natural products, where doctors basically said no allergens, safer natural products, and they were just not available. And I think like any other mom, Facebook groups were very prevalent at that point of time. So I logged into them, tried and asked from a lot of other mothers. And actually this was around the same time as the whole Johnson's controversy was also at its utmost peak, right? So people were in this unique space where people were losing faith over the age-old brands. And the whole thing of trying out newer brands was sort of building up, right? And as long as you could prove that you were safe was where people were willing to try. That coupled with the fact that people were buying and shopping from online platforms was where kind of we got a little hope saying that maybe there is a business out here. When we started investigating with a lot of people, we realized that, there was this entire thing where moms were asking for products, not just for their kids, their babies, but also for themselves. And there was nobody else who was looking into this request. And that's where we decided saying that, and that's where actually the name also came from, which is the Mom's Co, saying that can we create a brand that can be a mom's trusted partner into a journey of motherhood? And can we create products that she's really asking for and build a brand that is truly built on the asks of the mother? So, cater to whatever she's asking for and create it. And that's, I think, where a large part of our journey originally began.
I came at this a bit differently. So I was in Snapdeal for a year and a half before that. And I saw a little bit of from the data that the woman was the most frequent shopper with the highest repeat rates actually, right? Where she was solving a problem going beyond value, beyond price. That social media was starting to pick up and people were really discovering and starting conversations on social media. What Mallika said, that Facebook groups and WhatsApp had become the platform of choice for solving for problems. Right? So it felt a little bit like, and e-commerce of course was kicking up and actually had reached some scale. Right? So just from that experience, it seemed like both generating demand, getting some conversations around your brands, fulfilling that demand across the country was now possible. And so when Mallika came up with the idea saying, hey, why don't we start a brand? It felt like at least from a marketing and fulfillment channel perspective, this was possible now.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I missed your Snapdeal background. So that definitely gave you that extra comfort. And, so you launched the brand and at what point in the journey did you feel that you were close to achieving product market fit or hit product market fit? If you can just talk us through the initial phase of experimentation and getting to, the product market fit zone.
So we actually ran a lot of experiments, Hari. We tried out on different formats. We launched the product and we did a lot of trial packs because we were also in a very high consideration segment where, a woman is in the most sensitive part of her journey. We're all looking after her child. And we started off with products for pregnant women during their pregnancy, which is skincare in total. And, they were in this unique phase where they wanted validation from peers. They wanted validation from doctors, but they were also at a space where they were not trusting the age-old brands, right? The only only other brand that existed at that point of time was bio oil. And there was always a lot of people who did not believe in the proposition of the product. So that's where we came in. And I think what we did was we did a lot of sampling. We created a trial pack, and that trial pack was actually on our homepage for the longest period of time. Right? It was an SKU by itself where people could just buy the trial pack at 99 and you would refund that money into your account. So for any purchase that you do, that amount would get sort of credited into your account. I think that gave the confidence of people to try the product. And once they tried the product, we had an insane focus on the product quality and the product promise that we had. And that's how it kind of sort of playing up, right? And then I think the biggest challenge that we faced initially was that this pregnant woman was very hard to find online, because in India, pregnancy is not announced for the longest period of time. When it gets announced, baby showers is when it comes in. So I think what we did was we started opening kiosks inside hospitals and building this relationship with both moms who are pregnant, waiting in the lounge for their chance to come, and at the same point of time with doctors as well. And again, all focused on driving trials and trials. So we were very focused on driving a lot of trials. And as I said, insane focus on product quality and the product promise. And that kind of, I think, got us to a stage where we had one person recommending others. And I think the beauty of an online brand is that you get feedback very, very quickly, right? You know, in the very initial stages of our journey, we got letters from women who had just sort of gotten out and come home after 6 days of having a birth of a child, and then writing a letter to us saying that, you know, on my delivery table, the doctor said you have no stretch marks. And I was like, okay, I tried this new brand. And then there were people who were walking into delivery and calling us and saying, listen, I'm on my way to the hospital right now, but can you please make sure that the baby products reach me in time because I'm having an early delivery. And I think when you manage to create such a strong bond with the consumer is where you know that you're on the right path.
Got it. And, you know, really like the emphasis on trials. And I also remember in the initial years, I think, you know, focusing more on trials than just blind marketing led us to also build it very sustainably. I especially remember the first couple of years.
Yeah, the most interesting hack that we had was when we launched our baby care range. So this was almost a year after the pregnancy range was launched. So we had this entire database of people who just bought pregnancy products. Obviously, they were parents. So for 1 week, Malika, me and 2 other team members WhatsApped every single customer of the website till date. Said, hey, this is your name, this is your address. We just launched a baby care range. We'd love to send you the trial kit for free. Can you please confirm whether this is your address? And that's it. No cost, nothing at them. That was our entire baby care launch plan. And we sent out 6,000 odd trial kits to every single pregnant customer. And that started this feedback loop and the scale up for us for the baby care launch.
Right. No, that's amazing. And, you know, one of the choices that you made was on pricing, and it was a bold choice. You were almost at par with the imported brands, if I remember correct. So how was that experience, you know, and your learnings? Do you think that was the right price point to launch with? Just talk us through the thought process and, you know, and the learnings from that decision.
There was a question of who was our competition set and where was the source of growth, right? And I mean, all of this language we've learned over the last few years, right? So that's not what we called it then. But we basically said, which mom is going to pick us? And the idea was constantly, there's a mom who's not using Johnson's anymore. If she wants something natural compared to Johnson, she's already got a Himalaya, right? But there is the mom who's a Sebamed, Cetaphil, Pigeon, Kiko mom, right? All those brands don't exist in India now, the Kiko Pigeon. They don't have a natural alternative. So we want to be in this price point. If you keep my product next to their products on a shelf, what do you think my pricing is going to be? Right? Because so the pricing was very determined by what is the competition set. It worked for us, by the way, because of the quality of ingredients and the products we put in. We couldn't price it lower, right? So we basically said we will overinvest in product and the specs, so that the experience is fantastic and drives word of mouth, and make sure that we deserve a pricing that is next to these international brands. And the way we tested it is when we used to do a lot of events at that time. And whenever we were out in an event, we would talk to somebody and the conversation would be, hey, if you use the Sebamed, we are 20% cheaper, better quality because we are toxin-free and natural, right? And we have the same safety standards that they do. Why wouldn't you try us? That resonated with the customers enough to give us confidence that, hey, this pricing should be okay.
We were also, I think, just to add to Mohit's point, right? We were also seeing a wave of people adopting natural, and there weren't any natural brands. And what we had said for ourselves is that we're not just going to be natural, we'll also be toxin-free, which meant no harmful chemicals, which actually landed up for us to import a lot of our raw material from the international borders. So honestly, if you ask me, we couldn't price it any lower either. But having said that, I think the brand got created for the conscious mom. And this is pregnancy and baby is a category where people don't mind spending money, right? As long as they're getting a quality, and they can. So as I said, right, they were not price sensitive; they were more value sensitive. So if the value proposition could be transferred and sort of communicated to, they were happy to pay the price for it.
Got it. And, one of the other interesting choices that you made was also being very focused when it came to the product portfolio, because you had peers, diversifying really rapidly, but you chose to stay the course and, just focus on the mom and baby segment. So, again, if you could just talk us through, the thought process behind that. And now in hindsight, do you think that was the right thing you did for the brand? It'll help to just, because I know there are a lot of founders in the portfolio grappling with the same decision.
Yeah. Okay. I think again, me to take this. We went back and forth on product a lot, right? I think one was that our bar on product quality was so high that we couldn't launch products beyond a certain speed, right? To be honest. The way we adopted that into the way we work was we said we're really going to focus on trial and sampling and getting products out, right? The brand was if I look at the core of the brand that we had created, we said the core of a brand is going to be comfort and clarity for the mother, right? And this is the brand work that early we had done. And so we said, if there is clarity for the mother by default, you cannot have too many SKUs, right? Every problem should have one solution. We're very problem solving in the approach. And so we have to have only a few products to meet a few problems, right? And that came across in conversations when people would come and say, oh, I want an acne product and this is it and so on, right? Even when we expanded into the broader mother care, personal care categories, it was still very, I am solving a problem, that there's a reason that my product exists, right? What the bar that raised for us was that all products had to be great, right? Because they all had to solve problems. They all had to be effective. And so we maintained that bar and that quality. And there were times when we launched products which were not great quality, we got a lot of pushback and those products just bombed, right? So very clearly we were identifying the product as we are known as a brand that creates high quality products and great products, not a very large SKU, but that's why you should come back to us and buy from us again and again. Right? So I think the brand ethos lent itself to the product scale or scope that we got to over time.
Okay.
But also, Hari, a very combined decision between us, our investors and mentors all together, right? So the idea was for us to be able to help mom make simplified choices for her child. Just too many options were at that point of time, honestly, 5 years back, not needed to the consumer as well. During our journey, we actually saw the consumer also changing, where they wanted a lot more options. The initial consumer did not want too many options. I still remember at the end of year 1, we decided we wanted to do a hair care range because all pregnant women faced hair fall as an issue post-delivery and they were asking us to create products. It took us 1 month to convince everybody to actually launch that product because everyone just came back and said, why should moms go have a hair care range, right? And also, the way the brand was built was to simplify choices for the mom, which is where we did not go in for a very large portfolio. Also, to answer the question, I think a large portfolio, you will still have few winners. And those are the winners that you're going to be at, because at the end of the 3rd year, 4th year, we did launch a variety of products and took up the SKU to a very large extent. And what happened there was that you will have few winners and few laggards, and over a period of time, you will shut it. So if you're in a segment where experimentation is extremely important, right, with ingredients, with proposition, then of course, maybe that category demands you to have multiple SKUs. But in our case, if a mother chose a lotion and the lotion worked and did not have an allergic reaction and was keeping the baby's skin smooth, there was no way she was moving from that lotion, right? That she would going to stick to that lotion for as long as she decides to use baby products. And that was the difference in the category. Like she's not, okay, like today I've tried this turmeric lotion, tomorrow I'll try a different lotion, a rose-based lotion. That's not what the demand from the mother was. She was like, this works, I'll stick to it. In fact, the biggest challenge we had was that if someone had already made a choice on, let's say, a Sebamed or a Cetaphil or a Himalaya, how do we get the consumer to move, right? And hence the category did not need multiple SKUs for every product.
And it's interesting, you spoke about how you switch a customer from an existing brand. And I know that, Mallika, you were the face of the brand and, led from the front. So how did you obviously had the choice of going with a brand ambassador, etc., but you were the face of the brand. So how did you decide on that? And, just talk us through the decision-making process on that front.
So I actually did not. Our first film that we did was basically no money. The whole film costed us about some 60 or thousand, if I remember correctly, when we shot it.
60,000 including taxes.
Yeah, 60,000 including taxes. And we shot that video at home with my daughters as my story to be told. And that story actually resonated a lot with the category and with the people. And that's when I think this decision got made. We couldn't afford to have any brand ambassador at that point of time, which is where this happened. And I think as the brand grew, I stayed a lot more in touch with the consumer. And there was this whole thing on D2C brands coming up, plus this whole space of mom influencers and mom entrepreneurs coming up. So there was a lot of chatter around that. And I think it naturally led to the path of doing it. But to answer your question as well, to add to it, I think the first time we did a proper brand film with an agency and we shot and they came back saying that you need to be a part of the film and the lead protagonist. I was like, no, this doesn't sound right. Let's just get a brand ambassador. And said, no, nobody will be able to sort of have the same message sent out than what you would. And when I did, I still remember how the entire production house had no clue how to manage someone who was also acting and sort of putting in money to run it, right? Like I still remember we used to finish the shoot and there used to be this set pay bhaiya who would come behind to take away your coat because you can't make it dirty or whatever. And at the same point, I was like, show me the shot. No, it's not nice. And it wasn't because I wasn't looking nice. It was because the product wasn't looking nice, right? And I was like, you're not worried about what's happening to you? I was like, of course not. This has to sell. So I think it's a very, very different experience altogether. I did it because I think the brand journey and the brand story naturally led me to doing it. But it wasn't really honestly a conscious choice.
Yeah, I think it worked great as long as it seemed like a one-on-one connection. Right. So the brand was built to be very personal for mothers saying, hey, we are that expert friend who will solve your problem. And consistently having Mallika as the face of the brand in that context worked great. So we changed AME to become Ask Mallika Anything. And, every 2 weeks, Mallika would do this call where we would get 100 questions. We would then say, hey, what product do you want us to launch next? And we'd get 200 responses. Right. So Mallika became the face of the company and being very engaging with the audience of moms was very core, right? So it felt like they are company. I think till that point, it worked well. At the point which we wanted to do mass media, right? So for example, that big budget production, etc., I don't think it did as well because at that point of time, you really need a face that breaks clutter, right? So that's why I think there's a point of time beyond which if you're in a large enough category, you need a celebrity. Before that, we were very focused on pregnancy, baby, one-on-one conversations. And for that, I think Mallika broke clutter because everybody influencer didn't have the creds, right? And so till that point, it worked really well.
No, very interesting. And, it's almost as though founders leading from the front is considered a standard playbook for digital first brands. And what we see in the portfolio, sometimes founders are under undue pressure to, be in the spotlight and try and lead from the front, whereas it doesn't come naturally to them. So what would your advice be for founders on that front, right? In terms of just the importance of being there, leading from the front versus thinking through other options while bringing out the founder story? I
think in our case, it was also two founders, right? It worked only because the brand is a complete 100% reflection of Mallika and her personality. So she didn't need to pretend, right? Whenever she came across, it was completely open and honest. Me as a brand ambassador for the brand would have been completely wrong, right? So as a founder for 5 years, I stayed completely out of all events, out of the limelight. As an interesting aside, last week, because Mallika was in Bangalore, I went up on stage for the first time to pick up a trophy for the brand.
Oh, wow.
Right to that, we made a conscious choice that, thank you. We made a conscious choice that I will not be available as a face of the brand ever, right? And Mallika took that role. So I think, Mallika, you should answer a lot more details, but it works if, one, it gives you energy instead of draining energy from you as a founder. And if it is very core to the brand and the brand is a reflection of who you are and what you're trying to be, then it becomes easy and doesn't seem like work, right? Then you won't feel the pressure.
I think it's hard. It's very hard because I remember even as Mohit said, right, when we had those sessions of Ask Mallika Anything, we used to do it on a Monday morning and you had the whole chaos happening at work and at the same point of time, you were supposed to answer the questions as well, right? And there was this pressure saying that in the middle of something, there's this answer needs to be responded back on video, not on really on message. And I had to just switch on the video to answer that question to anybody at that point of time. So it's not an easy thing to do. If you're not comfortable, please don't do it because there is no way that it can come across to the consumer that you're cold or you're not listening. It's not really necessary that you're in front of the camera to address the audience. Also being subtly present at the back where you're responding back to every Insta message that gets escalated to you, every LinkedIn message or a Twitter message that you get is as good as being there, right? Because all D2C brands are not brands led by companies which have had years of existence and doesn't have a face behind, right? Like whenever you're trying a new age brand, the first thing you do is go to the About Us page and check out what's the background of the people. And do I sort of associate myself with the background of the people? And do I think I can sort of put in my trust in these people to try out their products, right? And that's what drives it. So not having that page or not being comfortable enough to do that much as well, I think is something which one should work on. But is it necessary for you to be in front of the camera to be addressing every query? That maybe not. I think that's something that can be avoided. But if you have co-founders, please make sure at least one is available in limelight and one is not. It just makes it easier for the consumer to trust everything that you do, is what I feel actually. Like, in our case also, it was a very personal story. It was a mom brand, and I think my story resonated with a lot of other mothers. If there's something you're doing very different which doesn't need that storytelling, and it's more led by product and the quality of the product, not really the emotion behind the brand, maybe then, of course, it's again not necessary. Like in our case, the feedback that came was that as a mother, if you can use it for your children, I think I feel comfortable using it for mine as well. And the work I had to do was portray myself as a mother who was obsessive. But I was like, if it was something else for which this was really not needed, it wouldn't have needed me to be out there as well.
No, and great point on how if the brand is a true reflection of your personality, then it's just a lot easier. That
Right.
I really like that input. Moving on, one of the things that Momsco was really known for was the customer NPS and the customer love that the brand had. So how did you, and I've been part of some of the meetings where we made some important decisions, but what would you attribute that to in terms of, new product launches or general business strategy that you think, got Momsco to that position where the customer love was best in class in the category?
I think what we did was we built an organization where everybody loved the product. And there was an insane focus on customer experience for it, right? I remember we had customer care executives. So what we did was we let a lot of our people, the team and the people, kind of constantly try products and speak to them about the products, because it was very internal for us, where I think we were one of the first few people who actually used our own products at that point of time. I remember when I was making a hire, he was like, I do all the NPD and I'm not going to use any of the products I've made so far. And my brief to him was that this is the product that you will use on your child, and that's when I'll approve of it, right? So I think we just built an organization where we were very proud of what we were creating. And we're in a category which drives a lot of feedback. So, and every person who heard a feedback, which was a positive feedback from the consumer, the trust in the brand kept building up. And we just did insane amount of stuff on ensuring customer delight. I remember there was once a call that we got from someone at 8:30 at night. I'm not kidding, 8:30 at night, where this lady was flying off to Dubai early morning, and her bhabhi had just announced that she's just become pregnant. And she said, the only thing she's asked for is your pregnancy box. So is there any way we can do it? And I remember my sales head was around the corner, roaming around in Delhi somewhere, finishing errands and heading to Faridabad. And he actually turned his car around to go and deliver that box, which was lying in his, the deck of his car. It was completely unnecessary. But imagine that person and what the person's takeaway was. And there were many such instances that we did, and I think it was just the culture of the organization. I think one of the values we had was put customer first. And we kept telling people that the customer is never wrong, right? There could be different things that could come up, but the customer is not wrong. So everybody has the right intention. There'll be very few people who will not have the right intention, but it's not right to kind of see everybody else in the same light as well. So to give the person the benefit of doubt and make sure that, everything that we do is driving some sort of customer delight. There was this whole conversation on rating everybody on what you have done across the organization, not just customer care, but operations, NPD, marketing, on what is it that you have done that is going to change the customer experience. And that was one of the KRAs that we had in everyone's scorecard. And that just drove that culture of focus on customer experience.
And I had this chat earlier in the day with some DSG folks. I think doing the work that it takes to drive customer delight, and after that telling those stories, right, which makes all the difference, because it really sets the flywheel of everyone in the company really thinking about it, right? So I give an example of early stuff that we used to do. first few orders, I think we were the first brand who sent handwritten notes to every single person, right? So 5 of us in the room would write a handwritten note for everybody. Then got to a stage where we were doing 50, 60 orders there. We said, shit, this is not possible. We figured out a way to actually print a note, but with the first name of the customer using Excels and macros and all that. And that used to then get printed and go, right? Then we went a step further on customer delight where we started asking for baby names. And then a note used to go to the mother and a separate note used to go to the baby. And the intent was you are then becoming, if you become the brand where the baby gets the first note from the brand, it's going to go into the diary and you will be the brand known forever. And we didn't realize how powerful this was until one day Madhika and we actually went to a customer's house for a delivery to get some customer feedback. Completely out of the blue, right? We had no idea we were coming. We had no idea we were going to a house. We end up knocking at the door. A woman stares at us very blankly saying, who are you? We say, oh, we're from the Moms Co. We work with the company. Here is your bag. Thank you very much. She makes us sit down. Her 5-year-old daughter comes in and she says, you send me letters, but how do you know my name? Right? And in our heads, it is okay. This is what delight actually is, because now we know that the girl and her mom is going around telling everybody this story. Right? So it was always, even as we kept growing larger and larger and larger, the intent was always, can we truly have delight at the moment of opening the box? Because beyond the product, that gives consumers a story to share. And it gives us stories to tell our team members, which they can then, which promotes this culture over time.
The handwritten notes were actually like on all Instagram pages. Everyone would receive it and put it out on the Instagram, which gave us also actually a lot of free publicity as well.
Yeah. I think that's also become part of the standard playbook now. You were among the first to do it. Moving on to more serious stuff now, and when I speak to growth stage investors about personal care as a category, one of the common feedback or questions that they are grappling with at their stage is around what's the real long-term defensibility in personal care brands? Because, most brands get the products manufactured from the same set of factories at the back end. So, usually they're grappling with what will create a business that's enduring over multiple decades, etc. So, what are your thoughts on that in terms of capabilities that you think brands should be focusing on? Because we have parallels in certain other categories as well, where there's nothing proprietary at the back end. However, it'll just help for founders to think through what are the capabilities that they should be proactively building in-house that'll serve them well in the long run.
I think a lot of it has to do with how you define your brand, right? And therefore, how flexible does it allow you to be in the future? So in our case, for example, when we launched the Moms Company, we were always certain we were not going to be a baby care brand. We'll be a mom and baby brand. Mm-hmm. And that allowed us over time to actually expand into mom and get into that horizon. Right. So I think the basic is if your brand is defined very differently, it's much harder for larger incumbents to copy you. Right. And so by one, the potential extensibility of the brand itself becomes one more. Second is if process-wise within the company you're able to do things very differently, which is going to take a long time for the big boys to replicate. Right. So in our case, for example, that was doing one-on-one connects with the mother, right? And building that as DNA. The consumer experience that you spoke about, building that as DNA, because larger companies just cannot think customer first at that level, right? The companies are organized very, very differently. And I think third, if you can crack it, is being truly innovative on products, right? Which happens in some cases where you create ingredients. In our case, it was the under-eye roller where we were first to market it. And after that, you've had copies, but they haven't been taken to take that number one spot. Right? We lost the number one spot as an example with a stretch mark bundle that also we innovated on. So in our first year, we said, hey, moms are saying stretch marks, there are butters and oils. We combined the two into a stretch mark bundle at a 500 rupee price point, really helped us establish pregnancy leadership in that category. Mm-hmm. But Himalaya then launched a similar bundle at half a price and we lost the market share. Right? But at the same time in pregnancy, we launched a pregnancy gift box, which is 4 or 5 products. It is now the de facto choice for moms when someone gets pregnant. We have multiple stories of women who will call us and say, hey, I got 4 pregnancy gift boxes, right? Can I return 3? I don't know what to do with so many, right? So innovation, not just on the product, but packaging, proposition, which over time becomes very hard for larger brands to replicate. They can copy on individual products, but they can't copy on the wider things. And I think if you can repeat this cycle often enough, over time, you build a DNA in the company that makes allows for defensibility.
Yeah, and completely agree. And defensibility is not a static concept, as you rightly said. It's about being at it. And I think the three things I picked up were customer centricity, product innovation, and brand, of course. And being constantly ahead of the curve. The other aspect when it comes to defensibility of building the business sustainably is on how you ensure that the unit economics play out even as you scale up. And, that's something that often comes under pressure, especially now with customers venturing out to offline channels, etc. The last 2 years were relatively easier for digital first brands. What is your advice on how brands can avoid being over dependent on performance marketing as they scale up?
Don't start with it. Don't do it. Which is the ideal scenario, right? Don't spend anything on perf marketing. That's what we'd all like to do if we had luxury of time, right? And no competition coming after us. But I think the reality is you're building your brand from day one, right? Your product, your packaging, your story, everything you say is actually building the brand. And that's something that you have to obsess over, because truly that's the only thing that other people can't replicate. If I look at the youngest brands today that I work with, and this is now we're outside the mom school a little bit, I think the brands that will succeed in the long term are the ones who got their brand story sorted in the very beginning, right? They're doing things differently. They're saying their story differently. And so that becomes much harder to replicate for anybody. That gives you some breather, right? That means that your performance marketing is far more efficient, right? Like I just read this story on Attenberg, for example, that on Amazon spends 2% of revenue as advertising costs, right? Because they've just hacked Amazon like crazy.
Yeah.
That's unheard of for the rest of our brands, right? Which is at 30-40% on ACOS or total. Yeah. So I think resist the urge to ramp up on the back of performance marketing, because essentially it's a steroid, right? Or it's cocaine. And you have to figure out these other hacks that actually get you going and get you those upticks in the near term. Yeah. The thing you have to be okay with is that it's not month-on-month growth, right? Your brand building will take time and compounds over time. So how do you manage the balance is very important.
Yeah, I'll just add to Mohit's point on that, right? Like, I think it is very important that your brand is irrelevant if too many people are not adopting into it at the end of the day, right? So constantly innovating on, what else can we do outside of performance marketing is very, very good. But I truly believe that performance marketing is honestly needed for the brands as well, and the idea is, I think what's most important is when we do the perf marketing, we kind of keep an eye on what is it that we're really looking at. And as Mohit said, right, it can be a money guzzler. So it's very important that when you decide to do it at scale, you have the right team at hand who's constantly monitoring ROIs, who's constantly monitoring and figuring out, saying what products are working, what products are not working, and have the ability to switch off very quickly and come back saying that this is not working and we need to innovate on something, right? So as long as your perf team becomes like a feedback mechanism for you and you have the very stringent rules set across them in terms of guardrails, or this is when an ad runs, this is when the ad doesn't run, I think that's when it will really add value to it. But the brand needs to be constantly on the journey of acquiring newer customers. Now, you could acquire customers through other means and you could acquire customers through perf marketing. And I think both are equally important. One needs to figure out how much of perf marketing does your unit economics allow you to do. And make sure that, as he said, it's like running steroids, right? On steroids, saying, oh my God, it's growing. And don't get into the loop where you're spending far more than what you're getting out of it. Because perf marketing also has its limitations. Beyond a point on the same ad, you will start seeing dip in terms of all the efficiencies that get built on it, right? So that's very important that we keep these guardrails very strong on.
Yeah, performance marketing is worse than a steroid, in my view. And would you have any thumb rule on, in the initial years, what should be the split between performance versus brand marketing, or generally marketing beyond performance marketing? Any thumb rule that you would recommend?
So, I don't think you need brand marketing in the first few months, honestly, because everything that you do actually helps you build the brand. So doing things like this, writing letters, putting out your story out there, engaging with the consumers, all of that is brand building, which is all you need because your consumer base is really, really tiny at that point of time, right? You're still building on activities like, we used to do pop-ups. in relevant events. We used to go inside every mom and baby pop-up that happened. Momsco had a stall in that pop-up, right? Being inside those places where a lot of moms would be available doing exhibitions is all we did. And that was all a part of brand building, but it's not really getting a celebrity on board, doing a big budget top funnel film, doing a full recording. I don't think all of that is required at that point of time because you're still building trust in your product and your proposition. And unless that gets finalized and you've found your product market fit, I think doing large budget brand building does not make any sense. These smaller activations can run as brand building. Your own teams can do the brand building for you. While you use Perf to an extent to acquire newer customers. And while I say that, also stuff like and I think insane focus of trials. And probably you do brand marketing, but you do brand marketing in terms of these pop-ups, driving trials, doing partnerships with brands, integrating the product in various formats, showing that the product is available with every person who's in the right phase of life. So for instance, we used to gift everybody who got pregnant from the influencer community used to get the Momsco's gift box. It doesn't cost too much, but what happened was almost after about 8 to 9 months of consistently doing it to every pregnant woman, the ninth month, someone got the box and says, oh yeah, now it feels like I'm pregnant because I've got the Momsco's box. And these are small efforts that you put into brand building. And of course, then you will reach a stage where performance will not yield the right results and brand will have to start picking up. And that's when you start investing in brand marketing and what I mean by that brand marketing is a large budget film with some probably getting a celebrity or a face on board, doing a top funnel campaign on it.
Got it. I think we have a silent audience. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, please share it in the Q&A tab. Otherwise I have enough questions to cover up for the rest of the session. You're continuing on brand. Now that, you've seen you are a part of the Good Glam group, any best practices that you've seen in the Good Glam setup that our founders can learn from with respect to marketing and brand building?
There's a ton that we're learning personally, right? But I don't know if it's relevant to the brand. So right now, I think we have the opportunity to work with a much larger group at the top, right? Who's done brand building at bigger companies. So Mallika works very closely with someone who's heading consumer insights, who has access to a ton of data and actually shares it on a fortnightly basis. Right, which is what are the ingredients that are trending across India, US, etc. What are we picking up? Where do we see, Amazon search ranks that are actually moving versus this? And identifying opportunities has become much more of a science, right? As compared to that. We did a digital campaign earlier, and this time around with Sonam, we did a TV campaign. And we just learned ourselves with Mallika and me that thinking media spend and how to do that is an art. Right? And people who've done this in the past are critical. I think when we did the last campaign, we made the mistake of assuming we can speak to people and get to the right answer. Right? But people actually give you their own biased opinions. We didn't have someone in-house. So one of the things I wish we had done at that time was had a marketing head who had actually done a significant media spend. Having now someone who we can spar with and actually create a media plan is a very different learning experience and working for us, right? So
yeah, I think, Hari, you just don't know what you don't know, right? Like I didn't know there was a team that could be on insights work or a team with which you could run through an idea, right? So when this TV campaign went live, there was a full thing that we did in terms of focus groups where there were some 10 focus groups that saw the ad, gave us insights on it. And that actually helped us correct a lot of communication also, which we had decided, right? So by the time it hits, it hit the TV stacks, I think a large part of it was already done because the consumer feedback was already taken in. So I think what happens is just because of the structure that we have now, the chances to failure get dramatically reduced as well, because there are enough and more people who are trying to ensure that you have all the feedback beforehand before you actually end up spending those really high budget spends on everything. I think the other thing that I really like doing is what they have done is, and what a large organization allows you to have as well, is get functional experts. And personally, for me, I think the one learning I've had and which I would love to do whenever we start something next is to have an innovation center. I think, just having some people whose KR is to try newer stuff, I think is what keeps the pulse of the, a D2C company going. Like we're not a large scale business. If we don't try newer formats of doing stuff which have not been done in the past, to just cover on what Mohit said before, what is our differentiation? Right. And I think all these people basically add that little differentiation, and which is exactly what you have here as well. There's a separate innovation desk altogether, which is just looking at a lot of data and coming back and saying this can be done.
Interesting. Now I'm going to switch to an exciting topic, which is around the exit that you guys had. Decision to exit is never an easy one, and I know that it started as more a fundraising plan, which eventually became an exit. So, what were the considerations? And and will be great if you can take us through that journey.
No, I think
Mohit didn't want to exit.
I'll give the rational answer to this.
no. So I think, as you said, right, and in our case, I think it happened slightly earlier than what we had predicted as well.
Mhm.
We still thought so we were very sure that the end result for the brand had to be an acquisition, and which is how all the choices that we made throughout were also determined by that, right? Like not having a very large portfolio, all of that led to the same decision that we had to do the acquisition. I think one of the strongest advices that we had got from somebody who's been a founder, who's had an acquisition in the past was like, whenever you have more than 3 term sheets on table, that's when you seriously start looking at it as an option, if it is ever an option in your head. And I think that's exactly what happened with us, because I think they learned through their experiences of not taking it up and then later wanting to do it by when they could not create competition in the market to get the best price for it. So I think that was what we got. So the moment we got someone, and while we were fundraising, when we had 3 strategic term sheets, and that's when we decided that, okay, let's look at this very, very seriously. I think the other thing that came across was that I think they were in a very sweet revenue run rate, where it was a very sweet deal for anyone to take on. Probably if we hadn't done this, we may have been too big for someone to kind of think that we will create something on our own as well. So I think it was just a combination of a lot of things, and I'll let Mohit say what he had to.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to put that into the 3 considerations, right, which we obviously learned over time. So how it happened was February last year, we got our first inbound from a strategy saying, hey, we love what you're doing. We've gone, tested the products. We'd like to take the conversation, which is when, of course, we had a conversation. At that time, Madhika and I weren't very keen, and we started on a fundraise process. We had a banker. As we did the fundraise process, we had our aha moment essentially was, as we spoke to the investors, we came to realize that if we took money now from any of these investors, we had 2 paths to take the business forward. To get to an IPO scale exit, the Momsco had to become a much larger multi-category play, which means that we would have become almost a new age mother care, right? So the ask would be, you go from personal care, which you're already doing, but also into diapers, you do plastics, you do toys, etc., and do that scale, because that gets you to a retail business, which is an IPO scale business. The other option was that the Momsco becomes a house of brand, right? And you start with the Momsco and you keep that core, but then you also add in a bunch of other brands. And as founders, Madhika and I were very excited about taking the Momsco global, which is what we really wanted to do for the brand. But that didn't seem to be an option for the investors who came in, because for them, the global story didn't make as much sense, right? So from the choices available to us as we went to fundraise, they didn't seem as exciting. Mm-hmm. In parallel, what Madhika said happened, that it was an interesting time where our run rate and the positioning was sharp enough that we actually had a lot of inbound. So we were able to create this competition which would help us maximize value and actually get a bunch of favorable outcomes for you guys as investors, from Madhika, me, for our employees, while also helping us meet the vision of taking the Momsco global, right? So we would do it for some time ourselves, but the brand would become a global brand, which is the second thing that we really wanted to do. And the third criteria which we had, and I'm actually thankful, was that we had investors who had backed us for 3 rounds, and we had the option, right? There are a bunch of folks who actually don't have that option. Here we had, interestingly, we were in a space where it would have been a great outcome for you guys as well. And therefore, when we first spoke to Deepak, he was clear saying it's your choice, right? Ash was clear it was your choice. So we never had the pressure to do something which we felt wasn't right for us or investors or the brands. That allowed us to create this competition, get many more people in the market, and then eventually go with the person who gave the best deal, right? So it just seemed like the right timing and a lot of things coming together.
Fair. And what would your advice be to founders on what they should prioritize when considering an exit and picking the right partner, etc., from your experience?
The best advice we got is that once the company is sold, it's not your fate, so don't pretend it is. Which is fantastic. I mean, we've seen it play out in the last 1 year, even in the decisions, right? So we want to take a marketing campaign a certain way, but the central teams feels differently. It will be their call. We want to open a certain channel and ramp it up, but centrally the priorities are different. So as other channels happen, right? So it was told to us, but we've seen it play out, right? That if you're selling to any strategic, assume for a moment that it is now not your baby, you are an employee. You have to be okay mentally being a founder, not being the founder, therefore not having the final say, right? You're an employee and many people have a say. If you're okay with that, then the only thing to optimize for is the rest of the construct of the deal, not what happens to the brand, which is a really hard mindset to adapt for your own baby. And it takes a long, right? It took us many, many months to get there. But what that allowed us to do, therefore, was negotiate a deal where, time for Mallika and me as founders in the company was very short, right? 2 years after the acquisition. It allowed us to do a large chunk in cash versus a lot of chunk in equity, right? Which was, again, what everybody wanted. It allowed us to really push for our employees and what our employees would be doing because that was a priority for us. So today, for example, a lot of our top team members are doing multi-brands. And so our NPD heads NPD for personal care for the entire group. Right? So all of the employees that we had who trusted us have got a great uptake. That was a priority for us. So if you take that mindset and you say, therefore, what happens to the brand is not in my control, but let you prioritize for everything else. And I think that's worked out well so far.
And also, I think to add to that, right, like beyond the Good Glam group, what we had was the traditional FMCG. And we just realized that in the whole Good Glam network, Momsco was a really large brand. And for them, making the brand a success was also a part of proving the whole concept of content to commerce work as well, right? Which was not largely a case with a lot of other strategies that we had kind of had conversations with. Like a few of them, we were like, how will you get us benefit on Nykaa or how will you get us benefit on retail? And they would come back and say, we will introduce you to them as our very good friends. And that was very different versus here. There was this whole team who wanted to just make the Momsco work and grow big. So as we speak, right, we are launching in Saudi. There is preparation happening to launch the brand in the US. And all of this is right now happening because it's a fairly large chunk of what their brand business is. So automatically, in terms of getting the best of resources, getting the best of talent to work on the brand, naturally comes in as well, which I don't think would have been the case if we were a very small pie of a very large business. I think this was another consideration that at least I had in the whole space.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm going to switch to audience questions. We have a few interesting questions here. The first one is from Nisha. So, she has 2 questions. The first one is, are your customers still primarily mothers or has it expanded? I'm not a mother, but I'm a customer. And how have you managed to expand the brand definition to also cater to these new customer segments?
So we do have a lot of non-moms as well as consumers, but I think what we realized was that the 2 things that are core to the brand we can't leave is on safety and efficacy. And we defined efficacy for the baby and mom segment as being safe and efficacy for the face care and hair care, which is the beauty segment, to be more in terms of clinically proven results. And I think so the core became safe and effective for us, and natural, of course, was one of them. And we tried to extend the proposition based on that. So every face care range that we have actually solves for a particular concern. So whether that's acne, whether there's anti-aging, whether it is, sort of just pigmentation, or now we're solving for dry skin as well. So I think as long as there was a problem that the mother or anyone over the age of 25 kind of faced, and we could solve for that, because what we wanted to retain was our expert positioning. Because if you're not an expert brand, your baby products and your pregnancy product won't sell, right? Because that was and that's the core of the brand. So how do you kind of keep the core of the brand and create a proposition that the core can extend over was a task, and which is what we did by creating efficacious, clinically proven result products for us.
The next one was my question as well, interesting one. What's your advice for aspiring couple entrepreneurs? What were the biggest challenges and how did you overcome them?
Honestly, we didn't really have so many challenges. I think I really enjoyed working with Mohit. I think contrary to what people might believe, I think there was no pretense that I had to do in front of him. So, right, like I could just come back and had a really shitty day and like just open up to say, shit, I did not know this in the meeting. I didn't like it, this and that. Or at the same point of time, just sort of both of us knew exactly what was happening at work and we could extend it. And, we were very empathetic. So if I had a bad day or a rough day, he would take care of the girls. And if he had he was going through some stuff which was around fundraising or anything which needed me to sort of do that, we did that, right? So we split responsibilities very, very easily. And I think the biggest factor of while we were doing this, there was no reason for us to doubt each other at all, right? And because we did not have doubt in the other, we kind of managed to survive it and we did not doubt. I think what really worked for us was that we very clearly defined our roles in the organization. And while healthy conversations were allowed, the end decision would be for the person who kind of controlled that vertical or ran that vertical. Also, what really helps is Mohit and I have very contradictory and very, very contrasting skill sets. And he just played on to his strengths while I played on to mine. And we didn't try and and that was also the ease of just managing it all, right? So I think just figuring out naturally what we're comfortable doing and we thrive doing is what the person ended up doing.
All right. So that was easier than I thought.
Hard when we actually had like a whiteboard in our bedroom and we would wake up to this list of to-dos to do, right? We very quickly moved to a stage where we decided this is not going to work and we need to move the whiteboard out of the bedroom. And I think that's when the things changed.
Okay. The next one is on the fact that the two of you had consulting and banking experience. What about founders with limited corporate or startup exposure? Do they lack certain things? Is there a cause of concern for such people starting out?
Not at all. I think, in fact, probably on the positive. So, great example. For me, it took a few months after McKinsey and then, McKinsey, Snapdeal, and then joined here. It took me a few months to realize that stuff isn't happening because when you tell people, it doesn't mean it's going to get done. Right? And that was a training that I had in my consulting background because people just delivered. Right? So, in fact, I think on the consulting side, what worked great was communication and analytics is the only thing which was very, very strong takeaways for me, communication, analytics, problem solving. But there was a lot of things that I had to relearn, right? So the only thing I'd say, which is true of all founders, right? Not just people with or without backgrounds, is that there are people and there are founders ahead of the journey. Everyone's gone through the same shit as you're going through right now. Please pick up the phone and have a conversation. Right? That will be the best source of learning that you have, far better than any past experience you've had before.
And I think honestly, what you need is a real passion of trying to solve for what you're trying to create. Yes, everything else can be fixed or hired for. Like if you think there is something that you don't know, like both Mohit and I, as you said, right, had a very different background. But we ventured into a journey of creating skincare products. It's got nothing to do with banking or consultancy at all, right? But we really had this passion to solve for this particular problem. And we decided, come what may, we will find a solution for it. And then the first hire we made in the company was like a cosmetologist who could actually do that work. So if there's something that you think is really necessary, I think the power of the entrepreneur to be able to take that call saying, I don't know this and I need to hire for this is something that every person needs to have. It does not matter on what your background is. But if you don't have the ability to figure this out, that's a cause of concern.
All right. The next question is from Devansh. I think he wants to understand the influencer marketing playbook better in terms of the influencers you targeted, whether they were implicit or explicit expectations of them posting it on their social media. If you could just at a high level take us through the influencer marketing playbook.
So it changed over a period of time. So the first ones were all barter that we did because we honestly didn't have the money to pay a very large influencer. So anyone whom we could catch hold of who knew one of the influencers we wanted to reach out to from our network, we tried to send them products. And for some of them, it took as long as 6 months to get onto a call with us to figure out whether they wanted to post for the product or not. So I think influencer marketing is an always continuously evolving journey. Also, when we started, you could do a lot of barter. Right now, there are a lot of commercials involved with it. And I think the thing that works the best is to be upfront about what your expectations are, what you're willing to pay for it. And I think if the request is clear, and that's when the influencer comes on board, I don't think you will have a problem. So all the requests or deliverables are very explicitly stated for us, including briefs on how I want that video shot, which is clear background and all of that as well. When it came down to identifying certain influencers, what we did was we did work with a lot of upcoming influencers. We got them at a cheaper rate because obviously they were not established. Their followership wasn't that high, but they were a very loyal set of people that they had. So even people who had 6K, 7K followers, we did go ahead and do an engagement with them because we thought they were very relevant and they were upcoming at that point of time. And over a period of time, we've actually seen influencers grow from that 6K followers to like 200, 300K followers. And those people share a very different bond with you, right? Because you trusted in them and that nobody did. So I think it's a constant work of figuring out who the new people will be who are doing really good work from a content perspective, working with them. And at the same point of time, trying to reach your audience from the people who actually have that cohort of audience, which you're trying to sort of solve for.
It's interesting. A lot of our brands have had similar experiences with upcoming influencers as opposed to the more established ones. So final question for both of you, Mohit and Mallika, for those listening in, if they want to become the next Mohit or Mallika, what do you think are the skill sets or attitude required to get them there?
I just refuse to give up. That's all. Like, I don't think someone can. Like, when I wanted to create the Momsco, I got a lot of criticism from a lot of people. There were lots of people who denied working with us because it was a segment which was led by really large firms. But I just refused to give up. I just kept showing up. There was a joke that few of our suppliers shared saying, "Roj aa jati hai Gurgaon se Noida." So, let me just sort of work with her. And what you'll be surprised with is a lot of people, this just did work for me, not because I would make it big, but because I'd put in so much effort that they said, okay, let's just try it. And over a period of time, then we became their largest buyers. And I think all of it was just led by saying that, I refuse to take no as an answer broadly.
Mohit?
I married Mallika.
Smart man.
The smartest decision I ever made. And how that played out was I was very cognizant of what I'm good at and not. Right? And I kept finding ways to make myself redundant over time and hire for stuff that I didn't enjoy doing. Right. And I think that's also in part I'm answering, one of the questions that you had. What if you feel that as a founder, your potential is limited? Do you hire or do you try and scale and build that as a skill set? So I think what we learned over time, and hopefully what I did well, was learn what I enjoy doing and keep trying to do more and more of that while getting people in to take on the stuff that I didn't enjoy doing day to day. Right? We were lucky that Mallika was always fantastic at brand and product, and that she continues doing even to the date. My role changed a lot over time as we hired, right? So I was in the first year, I was running Facebook ads and doing D2C. In the second year, I was running the marketplaces. Then we hired a salesperson. It changed to a lot more of finance, etc., etc. Right? So be very okay if you don't know stuff, and be okay to either, if it excites you and energizes you and is critical to your business, then learn. Otherwise, be okay to hire for it.
Okay. I know we're out of time, but I just see one more question. Can we just take that and wrap it up if it's okay with you? It's an interesting one. So the question is, after scaling to a certain level, if the founder feels his potential is limited, and, probably I think he means the founder feels that they don't have it in them to take it to the next level, what should the founder do? Should they reach out to senior folks and onboard them with equity, or keep trying?
I think the rule is, if something doesn't energize you, don't do it. Because you'll be surprised on how your energy as a founder trickles down to everybody in your teams as well, right? So very quickly hire. But I think one thought that I would like to leave everybody with is that as a founder, it's not your job to know it all. There is no way one can know everything about branding, fundraising, finance, operations, HR, customer care. It's humanly not possible for you to know it all. It's easy to do it in the initial stages of your journey because it's smaller, it's less complex. But as the team size increases and there are more processes that are needed to be built in to make everyone's life easy, it just gets harder. You need people who have had that experience in the past who've built it, which is why you hire functional experts. And then that doesn't mean that your role has become redundant. Your role actually starts at that point of time because there are so many different heads that you would have hired. And now you need to figure out how to make the machinery run, right? How do you get people to talk to each other? How do you keep everybody on the same boat? How do you keep everyone motivated towards a common goal? How do you set that goal? Becomes all important at that point of time. And then it's not about just skills, and it's just about, as I said, your passion to get the ship running or the boat running at that point of time, right? And which is something which nobody can ever take away from a founder. So, and through the people that you hire, you will constantly learn and evolve. And I think the beauty of entrepreneurship is how much you've learned. As Mohit said, right, like I took care of the brand and the marketing. I did my MBA in finance. I did nothing in marketing when I studied marketing, right? So I learned all of it on the job because we had mentors in place. And that second thing that you can do is probably, if you really feel there is something that you would really like to know because it's important to your business and score to your business, just get a mentor who can kind of coach you and build you through that skill while you learn. But there is absolutely no reason to burn yourself out, because your job is not to know the vertical, but your job is to keep ship running.
No, that's great advice. And thank you, Mohit and Mallika. This was an excellent conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did as well. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.